Welcome to the Leader's Pause, where leaders like you tune in to find calm, get clear, and level up. Tune in with best-selling author, speaker, and coach Hal Runkel as he helps you take back your time, your energy, and your decision-making power. All you have to do is learn to press your own pause button first. So, take a break, take a breath, take a knee, and learn to access your greatest human superpower, the ability to pause, think, and decide for yourself. It's time to find calm, get clear, and level up. The Leader's Pause starts now.
Good evening, afternoon. I'm thrilled that you're here. This is the Leader's Pause. I'm your host, Hal Runkel, and this is episode 2 of this show. And I'm going to explain kind of what the Leader's Pause is very quickly. It's what we're doing right now. It is an intentional effort to take hold of the greatest human superpower that we have. And it's because we're the only creatures that can do it. And it's this amazing ability to press pause between stimulation and response. And I chose that word very, very carefully, because when we automatically respond, that's actually not a response. That's a reaction. So you may have heard flight or fight response. It's actually a misnomer. It's fight or flight reaction, meaning it's unthought. It's a part of our brain that can't pause. It's part of our brain that we share with almost every other living being. And it is just instinct, automatic reaction. And, we need that, like duck, something's heading for you or get out of the way. We need it. But most of our lives, the best decisions we've made, the best actions we've taken, the best words that we've said, have all come after we've taken an intentional breath, multiple breaths, a season, something to slow our brain down so that we can think through, what would my principles have me do? Not my anxieties and fears, because that's where reactions come in. But what would my principles tell me to do? What would my hopes? What would my dreams? What would it be if I pursued what I want most in this situation, as opposed to what all my emotions are telling me I want right now? So the Leader's Pause, it's what I do with my clients. I lead them through an exercise that helps them learn to access this human superpower in the heat of the moment so that you can handle any moment. And if you want to know the power of the pause, one thing to consider is Thich Nhat Hanh is a Buddhist monk and writer, and he wrote a book on anger, just called Anger, and I think it's one of the best. And he just says, go back in time. Watch a video of yourself. Think, just an exercise, of the worst decisions you've ever made. Now, watch that scene, which is painful to do. It's the money you chose to spend in this way. It's the time you wasted in that way. It is that person you chose to be with. And it is those words that you chose to say to your kids or your employees or your spouse or your friend. Now, go back in time and watch yourself, and then pretend like you are actually watching these videotapes, these videos of yourself in the past, and press pause. Right before you make that decision, press pause. And what the Vietnamese monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, says is now interject 3 deep breaths right then, right before you make that decision. Now, does that guarantee that you won't make the same mistake? Of course not. You could take 3 deep breaths and then still jump into that relationship. You could jump into that investment. You could launch into that tirade. You could do any measure of things that are, again, usually reactions. Or is there a chance that by taking those 3 deep breaths, breathing oxygen into your brain so that you could access the higher parts of your brain, so that you might say, you know what, this is not really what I want most. This is what I want right now, is to rant and rave and have you feel as much pain as I think you've made me feel. But is that what I want most? No, what I want most is for us to develop dialogue with each other that doesn't hurt. But I can't do that if I'm going to just reciprocate you hurting me. I'm going to deliver bad news that I have to deliver, but I'm going to do it in a way that is compassionate, not retributive. Retributive. I don't know which word, how to pronounce that word. Not out of retribution. How about that? Not out of reciprocity to make you hurt. I'm going to deliver bad news in a way that you can actually tolerate and you can actually hear me, where I'm going to take full responsibility and not blame somebody else or blame you. And that brings us to the topic of today's show. So what we do with the Leader's Pause is take an intentional time. This is just 30 minutes. Take an intentional time to pause so that we can think through what are the principles that we want guiding our next actions, our next steps. And is there a chance we can access those principles when it comes time to take that next step? And so what we talk about are the situations we find ourselves in, which I believe are always the best paths forward to the life we want. Now, we can say that, but it takes a special mindset to appreciate whatever situation you're in. And one of the, and they may be negative, and one of the most difficult situations for any person in any leadership role. And when I say the leader's pause, I mean all of us, because every single one of us is a leader of someone else. Every single one of us. You may think, you know what, I'm not a leader at work. Well, you have a kid, you're a leader. Guess what? But if you're in a relationship, you're leading. Not hierarchical leading, but you are leading by what are you initiating? I talked earlier about how about we find dialogue that doesn't hurt? Well, you're in charge. The other person's in charge of what they do, but you're in charge of what you do. And you know you can lead the next dialogue in that direction or not. But either way, you're a leader. Because if you're not, if you're being passive, and we're going to talk about this more in a bit, you're still leading. You just don't think you are. We all lead. Every step we take has impact. So how about we make intentional steps? How about we take time like this to think through, what do I want my next step to be? And especially, it's powerful when you're in the midst of situations that you wouldn't have picked. Situations that you simply you detest, that you can't believe you're in. In the work that I do, coaching leaders, I would say if I did a survey of all the people I've worked with, there's military leaders, corporate leaders, parents all over the world, 90% might say the worst part of the job is delivering bad news. Now, sometimes I just launch the show with a question like, do you like delivering bad news? You know, if you said yes to that, we have much bigger concerns, because nobody likes delivering bad news, especially because we're afraid we're going to, they're going to kill the messenger. And so that's one of the reasons why it's done badly. It's nobody likes to do it. And yet it is like the hallmark of good leadership is, can you deliver bad news in a way that people can actually hear it, in a way that people could actually not just tolerate it, but appreciate it. So I'm going to start. Now, normally I build up and then give an example. I'm going to start with an example because it just happened with a woman CEO of a small company that blew me away by how well she did this. So there's a client I'm working with, and the situation was that she was moving into this new CEO job, and that meant she was leaving marketing. And so she wanted to find somebody to replace her in the marketing department. And she remembered this woman that she had worked with that was just a rock star that she loved. So she made her the offer, and she immediately took it. And it was great for the first month. And then the woman that she hired, the marketing person, her husband tragically died. Suddenly, young, in his 40s, died. And this horrible situation. There's kids. She's now a single mom and a widow. It's bad. So my client gave her, 2 months off and let her come back. It was like, whenever you're ready to come back, we can make do. And she came back, but it was just not the same. So that's totally understandable, right? So Grace, and how can we help and support and getting her help to it doesn't get better. A year goes by and it's just not getting any better. And so she realized she's got to make a change. So she got to fire her friend in basically the same year that her friend lost her husband. And I've coached a lot of folks in situations, but that is one of the trickiest. But she did it in such a way that the woman actually thanked her afterwards. She actually thanked her for the way that you're doing it. And, it's because she knew it was coming also. But that the way that she did it just gave her a sense of relief. So we're going to break down, okay, how did she do that? What are the principles she followed? Because she certainly paused a lot before delivering that bad news, so that she could think, what are the principles I want to work with in order to make this as positive a negative situation can be? So the first principle, and she would say probably that she didn't do this one as well as she would have liked, but the first principle is that bad news never gets better with age. It never gets better with age. It is not like wine. It never gets better with age. The longer we delay delivering bad news, the more we invite so many things outside of our control. Because, first of all, bad news will get out at some point. It will. And another principle, we're going to unpack this. We're about to take a break, but we're going to unpack this when we come back from the break. Another principle is that no news is always bad news. I know that goes totally contrary to the statement of saying we've always heard, no news is good news. No news is always bad news. After the break, we're going to unpack that, and I'm going to show you how. Thanks for listening. You are listening to The Leader's Pause with Hal Runkel on Transformation Network, and we'll be back in about a minute. So, thank you. You are listening to The Leader's Pause with Hal Runkel, and it's a show where leaders like you come to find calm, get clear, and level up their influence. We are talking today about one of the most distasteful parts of being a leader in any situation, and that is how to deliver bad news. You may be a boss with employees or colleagues that you are tasked to lead. You may be a parent with kids. You may be a teacher, but you're a sibling, and you've got partnerships and friendships, and you've got a romantic partner. All of these eventually will ask you to deliver some sort of bad news, whether that is you are fired or you are grounded. Or another example of incredible delivery of bad news was when a client of mine had to tell his children, who were 9 and 6 at the time, that their mother had cancer. And it was one of the best illustrations of how to do it in a way that is respectful, truthful, and compassionate, all at the same time. And so one of the things that he operated with, we worked on this together and preparing him for it, was setting a mile marker. Right before we went into the break, I talked about that no news is always bad news. It's because we're left in the dark, and when we're left in the dark, our thoughts and emotions can spin into so many different narratives of what may be happening, especially because usually when we deliver bad news, it's not completely shocking. Obviously, sometimes it is when it's an instant tragedy, But like in this situation, they knew mom was sick. There's grandparents coming to stay with him while mom is going to get all of these checks to see what the diagnosis is. And they knew that they were going one day to hear from the doctor about, okay, here's what the future is going to look like. The kids knew this. So one of the things is no news, though, when we're delaying that, when you're hiding that news from other, I mean, it's one of the things we grew up with. Don't tell kids, bad news. It's just so disrespectful because they can sense it. It's just like if you're running a company or you're running a team or you're on a team, if you've got bad news, hey, you know what? This thing's not going to work out. Software is not going to be ready on time. This project is not working. We're not going to meet we're not going to meet revenue goals, whatever it may be. No news gives people the idea or floods them, allows them to flood themselves with the ideas that build this narrative in their head about what's going on. You ever sit in the airplane, you've landed and you're waiting. You don't know why you haven't gotten to the gate and you're just waiting and it's warm in the summer and they're not letting you get up to go to the bathroom. Now they have laws to protect it, but they can still keep you there like 4 hours or something legally. But imagine all of that and you never hear from the captain. And I've been on a million planes where this has happened, where all you got to do is every 5 minutes, just come back in and tell us, hey, you know what? Guess what? I'm still waiting to hear news, but I wanted to let you know we're still waiting. We're still with you. We're going to keep checking in with you, even if there's nothing new to report. So many people don't communicate that way. We're going to do lots of shows on communication, but we especially don't do it when it's bad news. But bad news doesn't get better with age. So don't dawdle. Don't mess around. Don't beat around. Just tell the truth quickly. That's the first principle. Tell the truth and do it quickly. Don't dawdle. It doesn't get better with age, so get it out. And also, by the way, if you don't address it, it will get acted out. Whatever the problem is, if you don't address it, it'll get acted out, it will get leaked out, and then it'll get acted out in terms of the kind of devastating human toll of lower morale, backbiting, infighting, gossiping. All those things happen when people aren't hearing from you, and they can sense that if they did hear from you, it would be negative. So tell the truth. Now, when you do, sometimes it's best to set a mile marker where this is a conversation that's not going to be pleasant. Now, I promise it's not going to go on forever unless you want it to. But because I'm here to answer any questions you may have. But I want you to know this and just say it. So that's what this man did. And I remember he said they came home, they got the diagnosis, and thankfully they got a plan of action, and the oncologist was very, very confident, but it was going to be bad, a bad year. Mom's going to go through a horrible treatment, lose her hair, all this stuff, all of which she did. And so the client goes in, my client, and his parents were there with the kids while they were at the doctor's office. And when they walked in, his parents came to him, and he felt a greater responsibility to his children than he did to his parents. And so they were eager and they wanted to find out. And when he walked in, because they chose not to text it or do it on the phone. So when they walked in, he actually kind of put a hand up to his parents with hey. And then he turned to the kids and took the kids, he and the mom took the kids into a separate room, sat down, got on their level, and told them, mom's been sick, right? And this is going to be a scary word that you're going to hear a lot of people talk about, but we want you to hear it from us first. Mom has cancer. Then they pause. So it's another time, a great time for pausing is when you've delivered really, really difficult news and you let it sink in. You let the words have the power. Sometimes you let the words bounce around the room and let it have its impact. Then you can follow up. Do you have any questions? Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. It's all about telling the truth, but telling it in a way that is straight to the point. Just get to it. Great example of this is the movie Moneyball. And you can see this clip on YouTube because people have talked about this as such a great example. But Jonah Hill's character is asking Brad Pitt's character, how do I fire? Or how do I tell a player he's been traded? So they do a role play, and Jonah Hill's character hems and haws, and hey, you've been really good. He's dawdling. And Brad Pitt's like, don't do that. That's for your benefit, not for his. It's just you're trying to make yourself more comfortable. Just say it. He's a pro. He's an adult. Treat him like one. Hey, you've been traded. Here's where you're going to go. Here's the person you need to contact to all the logistical details. Thank you so much for your service to the club. Done. Now, is it easy to hear? No, but it's easier than the settled, it's like, I love the show American Idol, but I don't like it when the judges are delivering the final 24 results. I think that happened this past weekend, where they do a little tease because it's going to be the end of the road. And they're like, for you not being in the top 24, something stupid. They dramatize it for television, but you don't do that in real life. You don't do it. You don't dawdle. And then guess what? You don't babble. If I could wave a magic wand, that might be two of the things. Don't dawdle and don't babble. Say it to the point. For those of you who, if you remember English classes, Ernest Hemingway had the short sentences that were so to the point, and usually he was delivering bad news in most of his books. P. Hemingway. Short sentences. This is not easy, but this does make it easier. Another thing that does is recognizing that when you are delivering this, if you in any way come across as blaming anything else besides you taking responsibility for whatever this news may be, now this doesn't hold true necessarily in all situations, certainly not in the cancer thing, but you are the one responsible for how you're going to deliver the news. A lot of times the news you're going to deliver is that you messed up. I want you to think back. What's the worst apology you ever heard? It's probably some form of, I'm sorry, but. I'm sorry, but your behavior was so bad. I'm sorry, but. If you're going to do this, if you're not going to produce, I'm sorry. Or even worse, passive aggressive is, I'm sorry you feel that way. Which means I don't like that you feel that way, and I wish you didn't, especially about something I did. But I'm going to try and appear empathetic by saying, I'm sorry, it actually is pathetic, not empathetic, because you're deflecting and putting it back on them. You want to apologize as a leader, deliver bad news that you messed up something? Here's how you do it. I apologize. I had responsibility for that. Here's what I did wrong. It's led to this consequence, and we're going to have to work really hard to fix it, but I'm going to take responsibility for doing it. And regardless of how you acted before or how you act now, you always deserve better from me. That's how you apologize. Here's what I did. I'm sorry for it. You deserve better from me. And you follow it up with, and I'm going to promise to do this. Now, don't promise something you can't fully 100% control, but do promise that you're going to do something about the behavior. We could do lots of hours on this, and I do lead my clients through an exercise of helping them learn to deliver bad news. We've just touched on the subject for just a second, and it's time for us to go. I like doing this show because it does take the pause, literally. And what I would love if I had a magic wand is to help people learn to embrace this human superpower that we all have, this ability to take a break in the middle of anything. And you can take it at any time. In the midst of your delivering bad news to a romantic partner. Maybe it's, I don't like you right now. It's, you know what, I need to tell you something, and I'm going to tell you, I just need a minute for a second. And then go and give yourself a breath. The Leader's Pause is a show designed to help us learn to do that. Because when we do, it does make all the difference in the world. So, thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to The Leader's Pause. I'm your host, Hal Runkel. You can always find me at halrunkel.com. You can email me at hal@halrunkel.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.
You have been listening to The Leader's Pause with Hal Runkel, the show that helps leaders like you find calm, get clear, and level up. Tune in every first and third Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio to access your greatest superpower, the ability to pause, think, and decide for yourself. Book a conversation with Hal today. Visit halrunkel.com.